What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the View from the Clipper podcast. It's been a while. We haven't recorded a podcast in a few months. I think that's just general NBA off-season timings, but we're back because the NBA is back. And again, joined by Josh Sexton. Josh, how have you been? How's your summer? What's new?
Been good. It's been a strange NBA offseason, really, hasn't it? In that it's not felt like an awful lot has happened on the whole, really. It was a much anticipated draft class until the thing with the Mavericks and Cooper Flag happened, and then suddenly it wasn't very anticipated after that. And the draft, to be honest, feels like it could have been a year ago. It feels like it was so long ago, and not many sort of blockbuster-ish trades to report. Maybe the Kevin Durant one, but we all saw that coming a mile off, to be honest. So yeah, not a lot really has gone on this offseason. It's felt like particularly compared to the last few summers. So, chance to switch off from basketball, maybe focus on football a bit more. Although as a Liverpool fan at the moment, that is also causing me some pain, albeit from high expectations. I always have to add because the Clippers, trust me, have brought me far more pain down the years than what Liverpool could ever serve up to me at the moment. So, yeah, feeling good, excited to get back into the season. I watched both games from last night already because I was just like so ready for basketball to start again. So, yeah, very excited. How are you feeling, James?
Yeah, I'm buzzing as well. Yeah, I guess football season aside, just excited for the NBA to be back. And obviously, we had the first few games last night. I've just been really excited for the Clippers to get back in season two of the Intuit Dome. Looking to see if we can start off strong. We've made some really great off-season additions, some really interesting ones, and I think we're finding ourselves in a period where it's sort of make or break for the Clippers now with obviously the stars in Kawhi and James getting older. I've been locked into the starting five series as well, and I love seeing sort of a bit of the background around James, and I think that's just got me even more excited. So yeah, with the game on the horizon against the Utah Jazz, thought we'd jump back on, give some thoughts ahead of the season getting underway. We'll do a little bit of a look back to the off season. I think the last time that we spoke, the Clippers had just acquired John Collins and Brooke Lopez. I don't think we had a chance to discuss Bradley Beal, Chris Paul. I think those were moves that we said that we thought the team would make, or it was heavily rumored they'd make. I remember distinctly making a comment to say that I don't think they'd get both. They ended up getting both. The Clippers are absolutely loaded. I think the depth now is looking scary. It's a lot of talent. It's definitely an aging team. It's been the unction and the unks have been thrown around, and I think Chris Paul has even recognised it. And I think it will be an ongoing joke this season because the team is very old. But yeah, I think depth in the West is needed, especially when you're competing with teams like the Thunder, like the Nuggets, who are only getting stronger. The Thunder, the young team that's only going to develop further with the players that they have. The Nuggets made some strong additions as well, and the West is just completely loaded from top to bottom. So thought we'd start there, just with Bradley Beal and Chris Paul, Josh, and what your thoughts are on bringing Bradley Beal in, who's obviously had a bit of a down season last year, and Chris Paul, who played 82 regular season games and is returning to LA. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on those additions?
Yeah, both of them really feel like the sort of low risk and high reward acquisitions the Clippers have managed to strike, gold on, I guess you could say, in the last few seasons in particular. It feels like one of those Lawrence Frank, Steve Ballmer teaming up kind of moves in both cases, really, that the Clippers have been able to benefit from. The Bradley Beal one I'm particularly excited for. The Chris Paul thing sort of feels maybe more sentimental than it is like fundamental to anything the Clippers do successfully. Like it's been nice seeing the comparisons between last season's roster and this season's roster. The fact that we've jumped from Kevin Porter Jr. to Chris Paul is something I'm particularly pleased about giving Kevin Porter Jr. a sketchy pass, but also just the way Kevin Porter Jr. played in game, like the idea that the Clippers ever had him and Russell Westbrook would have ever had him and Russell Westbrook on a court together, or at least Russell Westbrook transitioning into Kevin Porter Jr. was a tough one to imagine. So
Yeah.
yeah, pleased to see the back of those players who are a bit more pounding the ball, inefficient, lots of shots, lots of wasted possessions, in favour of someone like Chris Paul, who is so much better on the ball, not a lot of wasted possessions, isn't gonna pound at the age he's at now either. Like he's going to be much more of a share the rock kind of guy and really, cede to teammates who are higher up the pecking order than him. And I think he'll know that going into the season. But the mentality of Chris Paul obviously is such that he always wants to prove people wrong. So, you're going to get more of that from him, and that's an exciting thing as well to see how much he can climb up that rotation based on, merit and the way that he plays this season rather than just on name, because it has been nice seeing the name back around the halls. It's been nice seeing him and Blake Griffin sort of rekindling their bromance, I guess, publicly again, because the Lob City era was a strange one in terms of like the aftermath of it, wasn't it? And that like they've all been on the JJ Redick podcast in different guises. Jamal Crawford, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan all have, and they sort of talked about how like they maybe weren't so together in the dressing room at the time, and they look back now and regret that because there was too much ego involved. So it's nice that now that Chris Paul's back at the Clippers, we can sort of close that chapter. The egos are being put aside again, and hopefully we're going to see that Blake Griffin jersey retirement this season, and maybe this sets up perfectly for the Chris Paul jersey retirement too. But Bradley Beal is the one that I think, I've mentioned before, more sentimental than fundamental in the case of Chris Paul. Bradley Beal feels more fundamental. It feels like he's going to slot straight into that starting five, bring more shot creation. I think you saw particularly when Kawhi was injured last season, and obviously he's coming into this season healthy. We hope that remains the case. He didn't come into last season healthy, so that was the thing that I sort of was reminding myself watching starting five, the same as you, James, is how we went into last season with more of those questions around Kawhi Leonard, really, and we're not going into this question with those this season, sorry, with those same questions, just maybe questions in other directions, which I know we're going to get onto. But yeah, like Bradley Beal bringing more shot creation, taking a bit of that burden off James and Kawhi is no bad thing at all. The defensive fit, I'll be interested to see how that works. But the Clippers have got brilliant defenders elsewhere on the court. If you sort of look past James Harden, and even then, I think James Harden is a sneaky good defender just because of his sort of size and stature when he wants to lock in. So give him a chance to lock in by taking some of that offensive responsibility off him, and then I think you'll see him really come to the fore on the defensive end. So yeah, really pleased with both the acquisitions. How are you feeling about them?
Yeah, I think at the time, like I said, I made a comment to say don't get both. I think looking back now, it was potentially a little bit of a mistake. I want to see how it plays out. I think with Ty Lue's tendency to go heavy on two guard, even three guard lineups, sometimes sort of varying those bench units. It'll be interesting to see who Chris and Brad get to play with, and then their minutes and how they stagger those, because it's obviously a 40-year-old Chris Paul who I think had a good season last year for the San Antonio Spurs. Like I said, played 82 games, and I think that's one of the key benefits of bringing in a guy like Chris Paul is that you really raise your regular season floor with a guy like Chris Paul, because you've got someone who's going to show up. Albeit he's a year older, but he's a veteran. He's going to lead the team through these difficult patches through the regular season. I think the Clippers did a great job of navigating the regular season last year, missing Kawhi Leonard for large part of the season and sort of using James as much as possible. But I think they quickly found that come playoff time, you may have had a healthy Kawhi, although I don't think he really played his best basketball in the postseason. But James, I think, in particular, looked quite gassed towards the end of that Nuggets series. So I think it's about conditioning him, recognizing that James and Kawhi are the keys to the Clippers winning the championship, and how do you best ensure them through the regular season, which is it's a tough schedule with the 82 games, the back-to-backs. Although the Clippers are in Intuit Dome now, I think we're discussing this off air. They're still playing early games, they still have outrageous turnaround times, traveling. Like, it's a real toll. So I think really bolstering out that squad is going to only do the Clippers the world of good in the regular season and set them up for the playoffs. And yeah, I don't think that needle was changed this year compared to last year or previous seasons. This has been a team that's been built for the postseason. But I think the additions this year set them up for better success in the regular season, which is why I think you're seeing like a lot of analysts actually like, I guess they underrated the Clippers too much last year. So they're going big on the Clippers this year. I've seen talk of second seed, third seed. I've not heard that talk since start of 2-1-3. So yeah, I think no one really wants to underestimate us with the amount of talent, but obviously I think we've seen teams with this abundance of talent and not make it work. It's just whether Ty Lue can figure it out. And I think he always uses that 10 game barometer. So I'd be interested to review this in 10 games time and see what the most popular lineups have been, what the most successful lineups have been, what the most unsuccessful lineups have been, really digging into the data. Because I think right now, who knows? There's so many different combinations that he can throw at teams. And I think that's going to be interesting. And hopefully we get a glimpse into that tonight. I mostly spoke about Chris Paul there, but I think probably the X factor for the Clippers this season is going to be Bradley Beal and like how much they can really get out of him compared to what the Suns managed to get out of him during his time in Phoenix, because ultimately they brought him in to replace the output from Norman Powell, who had I think arguably all-star season last year. Do I think he's going to produce that level of output? Probably not. But if they can get him performing to a similar degree in terms of the way he can catch and shoot, being efficient with the ball, not holding the ball for too long, reducing the amount of turnovers, and just really dialing in that efficiency. And if they can get that kind of buy in from him on the offensive end, but also defensive end, which is going to be really key because the Clippers were third in defense last year, and adding guys like Brad Beal and CP3 is not going to do the defense any favors, although I do rate CP3 quite highly. It's probably the other signings like Brook Lopez who might maintain those levels. So yeah, I think overall I'm intrigued. I'm excited. I'll be honest, like I didn't want it originally. I'm not going to completely backtrack on that. I think wait and see. And I trust Ty Lue, and I think overall just really excited to have CP3 back, just on like a fan level, because you'd probably agree with me on this. Like I became a Clippers fan in 2013. Chris Paul was my favorite player at the time. When he left, like it was gutting, but it was understandable. And having him come back to sort of do his, I guess in a way, it's going to be his retirement parade throughout the season. It's going to be fun. I'm just really excited, I think, to see more passes on this team, because I love that element of basketball, which I've always been drawn to those kind of players. And yeah, having guys like CP3, Bradley Beal, and James Harden, like that's going to be really, really fun. So yeah, I'm excited. That's Chris Paul and Bradley Beal, who we should be seeing tonight. I think Bradley Beal missed one or two of the preseason games. But Chris Paul's been playing and looked decent. So I'm very excited for that. I know we touched on Brook Lopez, John Collins previously. I think John Collins has looked exciting. He had a great game the other night in preseason. He's looking good from three, which I think was a lot of people's doubts around him. Obviously, yeah, it is a preseason game, so let's see how he gets on. But any quick thoughts on Brook and John and their fits in the team and what they might be able to provide the Clippers through this season?
Yeah, apologies, you may hear a bit of drilling in the background, having some work done on the house as we sort of speak here. But I've been excited by particularly those sort of main rotation additions this season, like we've spoken about Bradley Beal and Chris Paul. But John Collins for me is someone who the Clippers can tie a little bit of that short term future into. Listen, like it's been funny seeing the reaction to all the Kawhi stuff that's come out this summer, and I know we are going to go on to talk about that a little bit more in depth. But one of the things that's made me laugh in the aftermath of that is people going, or the Clippers, like the sort of rumors that were going around as the Clippers are seeing Kawhi Leonard as a problem. They're going to look to get off his contract. It's like, yeah, but that's the plan anyway. Like, if they don't trade it away when it's got a year left this off season in 2026, then they're going to do it in 2027 when they clear the decks, depending on what sort of summer they're looking to make that pivot. So everything has been about that really. Even signing Brook Lopez, even though it's a great signing for that sort of shorter term for the Clippers, it's ultimately about the Clippers eventually being able to get off all that money. Whereas John Collins feels like one of them where it's almost a little bit more experimental in the sense of it's not just necessarily for the now and getting off that money. Like there could be a part of the John Collins deal, which is the Clippers saying to John Collins, if you can play well now, if you can have that level of production now for the Clippers, then you can be here beyond that sort of that rebuild for us. We can bring in our next star, and he can play alongside you and Ivica Zubac and any of those young guys who are on the roster who may potentially come through. Jordan Miller is always going to be the guy that I root for, particularly within that. Shame to see Trenton Flowers sort of waived recently, but it seemed like it was because there's a place for him on the Chicago Bulls with him signing a two-way contract there and possibly moving up to the regular roster on a worse team there where there's more chance of minutes. So yeah, there's so much to play for the Clippers this season, and like you said, I think a lot of the excitement comes from that like almost lack of expectation really. Like I expect a lot from Brook Lopez in terms of being a better backup big than the Clippers have probably had since Isaiah Hartenstein. I have to admit it was just hard again. Watching the OKC ring ceremony last night and seeing him and Shea stood like basically perfectly within an iPhone portrait's width of each other, holding their rings to the camera. It all always make you think what could have been, in the sort of sliding doors moments that led to both of them being at OKC instead of the Clippers. But yeah, since Isaiah Hartenstein, even before that, cutting back as far as I can think, really, maybe to Marcin Gortat, and even then we didn't get great production out of Marcin Gortat when he was back up to DJ. So this really looks like the best backup big rotation that I've seen as a Clippers fan. So a chance for him to sort of step into that fold more and hopefully be an outside presence as well. But for John Collins, like I guess I'm expecting more than I would with a lot of the other, sort of, especially the older players, because as I say, it's that chance to sort of nail yourself down to whatever beyond just shorter term future of this Clippers franchise looks like.
Yeah, no, and I mean, yeah, I agree completely. Brook Lopez is probably the best backup big that Clippers have had since Isaiah Hartenstein, and I think I don't know who it was, the Thunder or the NBA. They purposely put Shea and Hartenstein together for that ring ceremony because yeah, that will hurt double because both have been sort of players that I've admired. I think particularly Hartenstein with the Clippers in 2021. Yeah, just real enjoy to watch. I loved the fact that he's got a ring now and Shea as well. But I think Brook Lopez is going to really fit into that backup big role, and it's something that he hasn't had for years. So it's going to be really interesting to see his output compared to those big men, in other teams. That he's going to be going up against in the second units. Like I can really see him thriving, and I think the Clippers have struggled with that position since losing Hartenstein. I think now they've finally found the answer to their concerns, and he can shoot the three. So I'm hoping that means less small ball. I don't know. We'll see, but I think he's like the perfect player for the Clippers, and I think it was a complete shock for us, even being in the conversation to acquire him. It came out of nowhere. I know we touched on it on the previous pod, but really excited to see him tonight and through the first 10 games and see how he fits in, how he plays with Zoo. Does Zoo take a step forward now that he's got a player he's working with that he's probably idolized for a lot of his career, and he can really learn a lot from him. And obviously Zoo took a huge jump last year, but I'm still trying to see that three ball from Zoo, and I'm hoping Brook can sort him out, and that could be his parting gift. If it's only one season in LA, let's get Zoo a three ball because he would be unstoppable if he could shoot it from beyond the arc.
Hey, we're seeing Yannick threes as well, so maybe this is the season that everyone's just shooting lights out.
Something's going on. Yeah, I'm waiting to see if the Zoo can shoot a three tonight. Might be one for the betting folk who love a random bet. Will Zoo shoot a three tonight against the Jazz? We'll see. But yeah, I'm sure Brook will, and that's something that we've needed. And obviously Hartenstein wasn't really that kind of player, or maybe he can shoot a three to some degree. But yeah, I think it's probably also on the defensive end. Like I think previous bigs we've had over the last few seasons just haven't been there defensively, and which is why they haven't had any meaningful minutes. Brook Lopez is a serious defensive player, even at age 37. Like I think he's going to be great, and he's in a city that he loves. I think we spoke about before his love for Disney and things like that. So hopefully he's got all the Disney stuff out of the way and he's ready to go for this season. And he's raring to go into it dome. I did want to touch on the quiet stuff because I know you brought it up, and I know you've also done a video on that, and I definitely recommend everyone go check that out. So we'll do a little bit on Kawhi Leonard and the Aspiration investigation, which has really sort of clouded the Clippers off season, and I think, like I said, the additions the Clippers have made have been fantastic, but this has sort of been the headline over the last, I guess, few weeks to a month. I haven't got the exact date of when it come out. It seems like it's been around for a while now, and it's still looming. It's definitely a distraction. There's a lot of media noise. It has disrupted media focus going into the season, but I also think fan focus as well. I think a lot of Clipper fans have had to try to turn into legal experts, which I do not claim to be. And obviously, everything out there at the moment is just pure assumption and allegations. And I really don't want to dive into it into too much detail, but I think it's worth highlighting because there are potential costs here for the Clippers. It's an active NBA investigation. And obviously, if you haven't heard, which I'm shocked if you haven't, but if you haven't, then the NBA is currently investigating the Clippers for potential salary cap circumvention via Kawhi Leonard's endorsement deal with company Aspiration, which is now a bankrupt ex-sponsor tied to Steve Ballmer in some capacity. There's lots of legal proceedings going on at the moment. I'm not following them too extensively. All I'm waiting for is just to hear what the NBA have got to say about it, really. And I trust the Clippers have done the right thing, but obviously, as you know, sport isn't like that. This isn't just the NBA. We know full well, like from a football point of view, even other sports around the world, there's a lot of things that go on that we don't know about, and that is kept out of media light for good reason. And I'm hoping that this isn't that. And this is obviously, like I said, pure allegations that have been shared by obviously I get to say prominent, or someone who's become more prominent in the sort of media space as of the last few months. So I'm kind of focused on like what the potential impacts for the Clippers here, because obviously it is something that is looming over their heads. And I said, it is a bit of a distraction. I know the Kawhi has already spoken about it, and I wouldn't think it would be something that would distract Kawhi very much. We know what he's like. He's sort of robot-like in his emotions, so I know that that's not going to phase him at all. I think it's just having to deal with that media noise a lot. It can be frustrating. I'm hoping that it can be resolved soon. But obviously, in terms of the penalties, from what I understand, up to like a $10 million fine, so financial implications. But I think more importantly for the Clippers, probably lost draft picks, reduction of cap restrictions, pinching of their luxury tax heavy roster in terms of the amount of money that they could spend. Obviously, the Clippers have got a lot of money going into next season. Are there going to be impacts on that? So yeah, we'll have to see. As I said, I don't have a whole lot more to say on the matter other than it's a watching brief, and we'll see what comes out of the investigation. But Josh, obviously, I know you did put out a video. Like I said, recommend everyone go watch that after the pod. But have you got any thoughts on the current situation and how it can obviously impact the Clippers this season?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, I guess, really, isn't it? Because, like you say, there are so many legal implications and ones that really, I think me and you can be more modest maybe than some Clippers fans have been this season, and admit it just goes a bit over our heads. Like, I'm here to enjoy basketball, watch basketball as a fan, support my team, support the players who play for my team until they don't really. Hence, with the sort of, we'll talk about full circle moment of Chris Paul, because I hated Chris Paul when he wasn't a Clipper. And that the same applies for Kawhi in this scenario. And I've seen people being a little bit more almost like looking to close the chapter on the Kawhi thing now, saying that he's been more trouble than he's worth. And I probably am almost inclined to agree with that, in the sense that, listen, he is one of the best players I've seen play for the Clippers, but he was brought in to win a championship and he's not done that. And the injury issues have been a problem throughout his time with the Clippers. And then now there's this, which sort of feels like it's really the icing on the cake of what has been an era that's not delivered a championship again for the Clippers. And unless something incredible happens this season. I don't anticipate it to deliver a championship this season, and even worse, it could be a situation which leaves the Clippers, as you say, without draft picks and sort of damage to what is a future without Kawhi Leonard ultimately already. I've already mentioned the Clippers could look to trade him away in this off season with just a year left on his deal if someone wants to just take that expiring money and give the Clippers assets back for it, and they could get off that money that way if they want to get off the James Harden money too. Or it's next off season, and Kawhi may face bans and things like that in there if it ends up being his thing and not the Clippers thing, and that's something we'll have to deal with, and it's something we'll have to deal with while he's on a max salary, which is annoying. So I hope it doesn't come to that, more for the Clippers' sake than for his personal sake, really. Like if Kawhi has done that, then I agree the NBA should be throwing the book at him, really. If the Clippers have done it, then again, I think the NBA should be throwing the book at it, because we've seen it in the Premier League, James, when there's been, allegations of made up sponsors and things where the sponsors that are connected to the owners of football clubs and stuff in the Premier League have not been hard enough on it. Ultimately, I would like the NBA to be harder on it, because I don't believe it's sport and I don't believe it's in the best interest of competition. So as unfortunate as that is, because it's my team, I'm not going to suddenly drop any sort of anything to do with fairness or any of my ethics around fairness just because it is my team that may have exploited these rules. So yeah, I'm not naive enough to think that none of the accusations are true. As you say, this happens in sport all the time. The one thing I keep sort of looking at and pointing to at the moment, and I know Pablo Torre himself has pointed to the Jalen Brunson thing with the New York Knicks, but the Shohei Ohtani thing to the Dodgers, like, obviously anything I say is only like alleged or just sort of like hearsay or rumors from my side, really. But Shohei Ohtani getting all that deferred money with the Dodgers for the best player in the MLB is the way I see it, is at least
Yeah.
a little bit shady, really, or feels like there may be some sort of thing going on there. And in the same way that Jalen Brunson taking a team friendly deal so that the Knicks could go and sign more star power, feels like there is something behind that too. So we'll see the knock on effect this all has if the Clippers are found guilty of it. Like you, I'm gonna try and imagine that they're innocent until they are proven guilty. I know it's the burden is on the other foot in the States. It's guilty until proven innocent rather than innocent until proven
Yep.
guilty here. It's sort of the burden of proof is on the accused party. So we'll see. The Clippers are the accused party in this. Kawhi Leonard is the accused party. If there are sanctions for Kawhi that go beyond his time with the Clippers, I can basically shrug my shoulders and wish him all the best for the future in whatever happens there. If the punishments are for the Clippers in the short term, I'm going to be sat here on X podcast whenever we find out about this, probably a lot more sad and reflective than I am now.
Yeah, and I think he did a great video on it, sort of talking around like the journalistic integrity of Pablo Torre and how everything's been reported. And I thought that was for someone that has sort of just seen loads of noise and just sort of turned a blind eye. Like, admittedly, I think your video is great at sort of summarizing that, and I completely agree. Like, until the NBA have done like a thorough investigation, like I'm sort of trying to avoid this as much as possible and really just focusing on the Clippers, which is all we all want to do. Like, I really don't want to be dragged into becoming like either an investigative journalist or some like a law expert or someone who's an expert on sports contract law or anything like that, because that's not for me. And like I said, I think we're both in agreement. Like, we'll accept whatever the NBA's verdict is on this. I think we're probably both from a standpoint where we want fairness in sport, and I think what the American sports typically do great of is sort of fairness across the board. Obviously, there are big market teams that get benefits that small market teams don't, but obviously compared to football, things are a bit more organized in the amount of money that you're able to spend. It's not based on spending power. There is obviously some differences, for example, with like teams like the Clippers, Warriors, and teams like the Wizards, where no offense to Wizards fans, but it just doesn't seem like there's like an ambition there right now to really like become a competitive team. But there are ways. Obviously, we know that teams can go around this. So I'm just hoping that obviously that isn't this scenario. But like I said, if it's found in this instance, I'm sure there are dozens of other instances across the NBA where this is occurring. There are all sorts of weird things, and obviously this probably wouldn't be considered like a loophole or anything. Like this would be something that'd be heavily fined for. But I'm very keen to see more rules like across the book. Like I find the draft really strange in that I found out recently that a lot of second round picks are sort of almost pre-agreed contracts. Like there's so much agent power, and there seems like there's a lot of agent power in free agency, but particularly in the draft class where like um yes, a second round prospects can agree with teams and ultimately tell teams that they're not going to play for them unless I'm going like 46 to the Lakers when I'm maybe like a top 30 prospect. Like I've seen these instances happen, and there's all sorts of strangeness that goes on behind the scenes. And I think ultimately when it drags on and is so sort of media heavy as this has been, it can really sort of drip into fandom, which we've seen over the last few months. So yeah, waiting for the verdict, and I'm sure we'll probably hear soon enough. I mean, how long has the Manchester City case been going on for? I think that one's a bigger one, but I think we'll probably hear sooner than the charges that they've got going. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Like I said, there are some penalties there for the Clippers if it does come back, and we'll obviously talk through the fallout of that. And you know, could Kawhi's parting gift be a championship title and a real heavy fine for the Clippers in the next few years? Would you take that? I don't know. Let us know. That would be an interesting scenario. But yeah, I did want to just touch on Kawhi quickly because obviously, I think a lot of people have been talking about obviously the aspiration stuff and like his age and him coming to the end of his contract. But obviously, his health, I think, is an interesting point for this season because he missed 45 games last year. He didn't get a preseason. He's played 64 minutes across 3 preseason games so far. He scored 50 points in the preseason games, which I think is great considering the minutes he's played in preseason. He only played one back-to-back game last year, which was, I believe, a back-to-back against Dallas down the stretch when the Clippers were really trying to lock in the playoff spot. So interested to see how many games he's going to play. I think from what I've seen, he's looking like he's lost a lot of weight. He's probably been through again another rigorous off-season program to get his body in the best condition, given obviously the risks that he has health-wise, obviously with the knee and avoiding any potential flare-ups that might limit him to again like a sub 50 game season. So let's see how many games we get from him in this sort of first run. I guess how are your thoughts of sort of Kawhi on the court this season? Where do you think he's going to get to? Do you have hope for him getting a 65 game plus season? Is he going to be part of the All-Star votes and awards and things? Is he going to meet the eligibility criteria? I think good question to have. So what are your thoughts there, Josh?
Yeah, we're going to do our some bold predictions possibly towards the end of this, aren't we? So
Yeah.
it would be a bold prediction, I think, to say that Kawhi will play that amount of games that he is eligible for awards. Because I don't think it's going to happen, I'm afraid. I think there was a thing that became clear last season was that the awards eligibility criteria was too high for a lot of the star players. Really, saw some big stars miss out because they would sit out of back-to-backs and things like that. And I imagine that the Clippers are still not going to take that risk with Kawhi, that he is still going to sit out back-to-backs and things of that nature. So I would be surprised if he was in any of those conversations. All-star contention, I would like to think so. We saw James Harden make his way back into that game last year. I'd like to see that happen again if it potentially can. I'm probably not as high on the Clippers as you've alluded to that some pundits have been. It's been interesting, really. I think seeing the teams I think are definitely going to be at the top of the West, and then seeing the way that pundits have perceived preseason expectations to be. I actually think the Clippers have been higher up really than I expected. Most pundits to have predicted. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see in terms of Kawhi. I never want to get too high. Like I'm a person who believes in manifestation, but I think I've manifested enough times with Kawhi and it's not happened that I can almost be like, right, let's just not even think about it now. Like Kawhi's a sidebar to whatever goes on. If he's fit and he's healthy, brilliant. If he's playing 100% fit and healthy, then absolutely, amazing. And hopefully means the Clippers can go and make more of a playoff run than they have done in previous seasons. But um, if not, then I'll probably be sat here again with you at the end of the season, James, being like, "Well, it happened again."
Yeah, I think we started this podcast this time last year, and I think we had the exact same conversation. Kawhi hasn't delivered a championship. Paul George has gone. His health is ultimately the only thing stopping from the Clippers winning a championship this year. If he's not healthy, come April, May, then they can pack it in again. Whether they want to roll with the team again, I'm not sure. But ultimately, this team's not a championship team without Kawhi Leonard. And if they can get him to perform at the output that we know he can, then brilliant. But again, I don't think that's going to be done. Yeah, any time soon. And yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see. And again, it's just going to be a conversation that's going to go on. I think the Clippers have got 15 back to backs, so you can obviously count those out already. I think he only played that Dallas one I mentioned because it was those were big games. The Clippers needed to win. They needed to win continuously to get that playoff spot, and obviously they clinched it against the Warriors in overtime, if you remember. So yeah, we'll see. But again, I think you can never bet on Kawhi playing games like they just don't go together, particularly in the regular season. But I think what is promising is that obviously he is getting a preseason under his belt. I think the season before last, obviously they tried to get him to play as much of the regular season as possible, but I think it bit them in the end because in come playoff time he wasn't ready. So I'm interested to see the strategy this time, but it seems like it could be like a final chance to really get it right with him, and yeah, remains to be seen. But obviously he will be playing tonight. The Clippers have full bill of health going to Salt Lake City, playing the Jazz with their new heavy veteran squad, the Unction, with championship aspirations. So I'm interested to see the starting lineup tonight. I wonder if Bradley Beal slots in there with James and is John Collins starting? Is he on the bench? Yeah, really intrigued to say. I doubt there's been any reporting as of yet. We've still got quite a few hours to go before tip off. It's a late one, as it always is with the Clippers. So shout out to anyone staying up for the game tonight. Obviously playing the Jazz, who finished 15th in the West last year. They were building with a young core, obviously led by Lauri Markkanen, who I'm a massive fan of. Also Walker Kessler, Keontae George, and also just drafted Ace Bailey with the number 5 pick. So it's a young team. I'm a big fan of their coach and some of the players they've got, but this should be a fairly easy game for the Clippers, and I think Vegas would agree with that as well in terms of some of the odds. Obviously, some of the key matchups, Kawhi and Markkanen. Interested to see again the combination between Harden and Bill, the Zoo and Brook Lopez minutes. What's that going to look like against Walker Kessler? And yeah, I think some of the keys that the Clippers have to get a win tonight is, can they maintain that defensive intensity they had last year? Obviously, they had guys like Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., who was sort of the front of that. Are they going to see a hit to their minutes with guys like Chris Paul and Bradley Beal coming in, who maybe on the sort of the lesser side on defense at their points in their career? Turnovers as well. I think clubs could see an improvement in the amount of turnovers they had last year. I think that they ranked quite poorly for turnovers, but they've got more ball handlers now. Chris Paul, who can take some of the load off James. Even guys like Bradley Beal can look after the ball, Kawhi as well. So interested to see turnovers. Can they look after the ball? And can they force turnovers as well with guys like Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr.? Because I think that was what they were pretty good at last year. Obviously, third best defense. Can that be maintained? The Jazz, yeah, I've not got high expectations of the Jazz. I don't think many people have. Ace Bailey could be the difference, but again, remains to be seen. So I think the Clippers win this one comfortably tonight. What are your thoughts on the game, Josh?
Yeah, similar to you, really feeling confident going into it. Ace Bailey not playing for the Jazz is a huge miss for them. It's a huge miss for the viewer of this game, to be honest, for the neutral and even for someone like me who, while being a Clippers fan, is just generally a fan of the NBA as well and wants to see new young stars coming into the NBA because I believe from what he's shown in the off season, like the preseason expectations for Ace Bailey have gone through the roof now, and people are now seeing him as one of the biggest sleepers in the draft. Really, the fact that he fell down as far as he did with the Jazz. So I was excited to see him play. I'm pleased from the Clippers' point of view that he isn't gonna play now in the sense that like hopefully it should make it easier for them to get a win. Um, it's a tricky one in all senses, really. Like it feels like an easy one. The Clippers should win. I can also see a scenario where they aren't able to pull a win out. Like I'm struggling with my preseason expectations on the Clippers because like I want to be higher on them than I am. And really, it's one of like the better teams we've come into the season with. I think the Clippers will win comfortably against the Utah Jazz. It's one of those games, and the reason why it worries me is because one of those games against like a good young team who will feel like they've got a point to prove, and the Clippers have really struggled in these games against the Jazz before, not necessarily in terms of actually losing the games, more just made it look way harder than it needed to be. Um, so yeah, it's gonna be it's going to be harder than it looks. Again, hopefully the Clippers can pull it out in the end, or just completely prove me wrong and go and blow them out by 20 or 30 and make it a resounding start to the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think it's hard to predict because obviously there has been a fair bit of change since last season. There's obviously a lot of additions, and the squad does seem a little bloated in terms of some of the lineups. So I'm interested to see that more than anything, and like how Ty Lue navigates that and the different challenges that will come through the game. If the Jazz do pull out a bit of a lead, like does he revert to a more defensive lineup to try and get more possessions? And yeah, I'm just really interested just to see how it goes in an actual competitive game. Like I've paid attention to the preseason games, but ultimately like the players know there's nothing on the line other than just sort of trying to get a feel for the game again against like a competitive opposition. So yeah, really interested to see how it goes tonight. But I think it'd be good to dive into like more of like a overall season outlook now, because obviously the Clippers are coming off a 15-32 record, fifth in the West last year, which was, as I sort of mentioned at the top of the podcast, was a shock to everyone. It seems like everyone has gone big on the Clippers this year, whereas everyone was like writing us off, they're saying we weren't even going to get the play in. We shocked everyone with how we played last year. I guess what I'm worried now is it's sort of like commentators' curse in a way that maybe we're not going to have the strongest season. And I think that's typically been the case, even when pundits or analysts have sort of expected the Clippers maybe to win the championship. Obviously, it still hasn't happened. Or they've expected better seasons and just haven't delivered. So I'm feeling more cautious about this season, although I am excited with the amount of talent we have. I think I've seen teams loaded with this much talent before and haven't been successful. Like I'm waiting for a team that's absolutely loaded with these kind of star players to really deliver. And I think if you look back at recent success or recent champions, you've got the Thunder, the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Warriors. I think it was probably only the Warriors that they had the thing going for them in terms of the star players and had that winning mentality, and they added Kevin Durant, and that it just worked for them during that moment. But still yet to see anyone like Miami Heat of recent years, or the Phoenix Suns, or the Brooklyn Nets, even the Clippers. You could argue 2-1-3. Obviously the Lakers got the bubble win, but I think that's still an asterisk in my opinion. But yeah, I'm still gonna wait to see in the first 10 games, but I'm expecting another 50 plus wins season for the Clippers. I think I'm probably gonna go fourth seed. I just think there's a lot of talent from other teams that's going to make this one of the most competitive seasons we've seen. Obviously, with I said the Nuggets getting better, the Thunder looking great. Obviously, the Rockets looked fantastic last year in the regular season, and they've just added Kevin Durant. I know they obviously couldn't get it done in their first game, but I thought they looked quite exciting, and they're going to be a tough team to go up against in the regular season. But I think that fourth spot is for the taking, and I think the Clippers might get it comfortably, and I think they'll probably have it secured way earlier than they did last season, where they were sort of fighting, sort of in the last few games to get that. I think they wrap this up earlier, and I think that's probably the goal as well. So they're not fighting so close to playoffs. Like get that playoff spot solidified, so they get more time off. They can start resting players, and take the sort of the hit from that the league will obviously give them. But you saw like the Thunder were so well prepared for the playoffs last year because they had so much time off. But everyone was fighting to basically play them. Like the Clippers were fighting to the end of the last few games, even the Nuggets as well. And then obviously the Clippers and Nuggets going to 7 games. The Nuggets having to then play like a Thunder team that just swept the floor in the playoffs and were just waiting to play them. It just felt like the Thunder just had so much time. And obviously they're young as well. So I think that worked out a lot for them. Obviously the Nuggets ended up going 7 games with them. But, I really do think if you can get the playoff spot secured earlier, then fantastic, particularly with guys obviously like Kawhi Leonard, James Harden. Even the aging team, you really don't want to be. I don't want to see this team fighting for a playoff spot at the last game of the season again. Like it's not going to give me a lot of confidence when the playoffs they come around so quick, and obviously the West is so competitive. Like I think thinking about now, like if the Clippers had a bit more rest, a bit more time for the Nuggets, who knows? Like maybe Kawhi may have been in a better rhythm, even James as well. And I thought we were really close in that Nugget series. Like we put up some really great performances, but I think as the series went on, it just couldn't get it over the line. I think it was just a bit too much. Too many games of basketball through that sort of that stretch of games leading into the playoffs. So I'm intrigued. Obviously, like I think I mentioned already, the Clippers were the third best defensive team in the league. Can Jeff Van Gundy do his magic again? Like he's got his work cut out with Bradley Beal and Chris Paul and John Collins. Like these are not renowned defensive players in 2025. And he's going to probably have less minutes for probably his favorite players, Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr., who are obviously just built for the way he wants to run his defense. So really intrigued that how that works out, and also the offensive rating as well. We're sort of around 10th, so solid sort of top third of the NBA there. And obviously we're adding more offensive power, so maybe we'll become a better offensive team. We can start blowing out some teams a bit more, and giving minutes to some of the younger guys. I want more garbage time for the players like Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown, etc. So I'm expecting a strong season for the Clippers. I'm lower than most, but I think we're going to go for fourth seed. What are you thinking, Josh? What are your preseason expectations for the Clippers?
This feels like the scene in The Other Guys where Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg have like a misunderstanding around whether it's going to be good cop, bad cop, or bad cop, bad cop. Because I'm afraid I'm going lower. I'm going lower than even you are. I'm looking at the teams that sit above the Clippers in the West, and you've mentioned it's a stacked Western Conference, and I think OKC are better than the Clippers. Obviously, I think Denver are quite obviously better than the Clippers, and them two should be two of the ones to come out of the West in terms of a championship. Really, the Houston Rockets look like they're deeper now. Obviously, missing Fred VanVleet, so I'd be interested to see how that makes an impact. It didn't make too much of an impact in the game last night. They still looked really good.
Yep.
You can see where they do miss Freddie, but it's like a higher level than what I think the Clippers can aspire to still, even without Freddie. So don't feel like we're much better than them. And then Minnesota, like there's not much change in Minnesota from
Yeah.
last season, and people are wondering whether they're maybe going to be even worse because of how they were dumped out of the playoffs last season, and because Rudy Gobert's another year older and stuff. But I feel like every time people ask questions, particularly around Rudy Gobert, he just seems to answer them, and that's like a frustrating thing when you are a team that's relentlessly competing with Rudy Gobert teams, as the Clippers always are, whether it's Utah Jazz or the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I still think that team, especially led by someone like Anthony Edwards, like the Clippers have got no one even in the same ballpark as Anthony Edwards. In fact, Kawhi and James are probably closer to that Julius Randle level of production, really. And Julius Randle's apparently had a bit of a revelation around marijuana consumption randomly this season. I was hearing on the Bill Simmons podcast the other day, like, it basically stopped smoking weed and it's made him loads fitter and healthier and less lethargic. So maybe we're going to see a renewed Julius Randle this season as well. But I think that's like basically a lock for what is the top four in the West, barring any sort of major injuries beyond, Van Vliet for the Rockets and whatever the Timberwolves have going into this season. And that basically leaves us scrapping with, the likes of Dallas, Golden State, the Lakers. I was going to say across the hall, across town. Now I guess you'd say instead of across the hall. I think we're better than the Lakers. I'd like to think we're better than Dallas, although a lot of that is contingent on how good Cooper Flag is, and I'm worried that Cooper Flag looks really good from preseason, which again you can't take loads from, but I'm worried that he could be the thing that lifts Dallas a little bit more over that hump because um, like Kyrie's injury is going to be a big impact for them, but we'll see. I guess we'll see on Dallas. They feel like they can be easily worse than the Clippers, but they also feel like they could just edge the Clippers if the Clippers have any injury issues of their own. And then it's Golden State, who I think are probably the ones the Clippers will most closely compete with in terms of who I can see getting injured over the course of the season. I think Steph will probably end up missing a similar amount of time to Kawhi because that's kind of been the pattern for the last few seasons now. Jimmy probably won't miss a ton of time on the whole, really, in the same way James probably won't miss a ton of time on the whole. And then I guess you've got guys like Buddy Hield and Al Horford being the match to Zoo and Bradley Beal, and I think Zoo is way better than Al Horford, but I think Buddy Hield is maybe slightly better or at least more impactful to the team than I could see Bradley Beal being. And again, Buddy will be in that team more than Bradley Beal will. So that becomes almost a straight shootout for the fifth seed. I'll be optimistic because you've put us at the four, and I'll say I'll put us in at the fifth. Um, I could easily see us being the sixth. I would worry about the Clippers being a play-in team after like a taxing season on old legs. So I really hope that it is looking more positive than what I've predicted there. Because I always feel bad. I always feel bad giving sort of more negative predictions. But I just think there are four teams in the West that are pretty clearly better than the Clippers for me, as high as people have been on the Clippers. I just think there's more star power ahead of them. And maybe it's part of me sort of being a little bit done with this Kawhi chapter now that is just making me forget how good Kawhi can be on his day. So I'll lay down the gauntlet to Kawhi. I'll do it right down the camera and lay down the gauntlet to Kawhi Leonard to go and prove me wrong, get these Clippers to the fourth seed, and I'll be eating humble pie and drinking a bottle of champagne hopefully come the end of the season.
Please. And a 65 game plus season. Could you imagine? That would
Yes,
be
please, please.
insanity. No, yeah, no, I can see your points there. I think Timberwolves have got Edwards, and he is just frightening, and he's just getting better and better season on season. And I think the supporting cast they've got around him is fantastic as well. I think the reason why I had maybe the Clippers like slightly ahead is just the depth. But again, like I think it still remains to be seen. Like, is it good depth? Like, is it gonna provide like useful lineups? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what wins basketball games. And if there are significant weaknesses in that lineup because you've got some star players that maybe don't fit, or I think it just remains to be seen with the roster construction. But I think it has probably more upside than the Timberwolves if they can really get it clicking and get everyone in gear, and they can really go sort of the distance in the 82 game regular season. Even if they do have like a few injuries here and there, like we've seen that in many seasons before. And I think they've got such a deep roster that I think they've really ensured themselves for this year. But yeah, like you said, the West is just so deep, and teams even like the Warriors, who I think made good additions, like like I said, guys like Al Horford coming in, and Buddy Hield, like that's pretty exciting for them as well. Who are obviously trying to do something in the last few seasons for Steph before there are any changes there as well. So it's going to be a fun one. We're finally back. We are, I think, hoping to do this fairly regularly throughout the season. Obviously, there's going to be a few games after the Jazz game before we speak again. It'd be good to talk through those. We might even maybe put some tweets out reacting to some of those performances, and if there's any fallout from those games, like we'll be keen to touch on them. We want to hear from you as well, the listeners, and if there are any questions, I'll be sure to put some posts out, and we can have a chat, get some of your opinions and hot takes on the pod over the next few weeks. But yeah, Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure to touch base with you again on the Clippers. Really excited about tonight. I'm hoping we get the dub. I'm quite confident of it. I think we both are. But let's see. We can hopefully review again next week. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, yeah, I hope I've not been too sort of down on the Clippers on this podcast. Maybe I'm just setting them up for a minor setback, major comeback type of mentality. I really hope they prove me wrong going into this off season. I guess I'm just sort of tempering my own expectations, maybe in a more pessimistic way, because it might set me up for beautiful highs. So yeah, I hope I can get back out to LA this season as well, and I hope the same for you, James, to get back to Intuit
Yeah,
Dome for me, and to go there for the first time for you feels like another one that has to be ticked off. Maybe we'll get there together at some point. Who knows? If you fancy putting the View from the Clipper podcast on the road to LA, then get in touch. We're open to partners and sponsorships who make that happen for us, especially if there's any airlines or anyone working for an airline watching this. Yeah, let us know if you can sort that out for us. But yeah,
please.
you can find me at jsexton24 across all the socials. James referenced before that I did a video talking about Pablo Torre and the sort of Clippers investigation, but more so the reporting around the Clippers investigation, to be honest, because that's the thing I've had the main issues with so far, as opposed to what is being alleged in the investigation. So we'll see what comes of that. We'll see what comes of the Clippers season. We'll be here to review it every step of the way. And yeah, thanks again,
Absolutely.
James, for having me on.
No worries. And obviously, if you're still listening, Josh, you've got your new Patreon show and also another podcast as well for people to check out through the NBA season. So make sure to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got the Sports here, which is just basically a platform for me to talk about any and all sports. Really, there'll be some baseball chat on there. There'll be some American football chat on there. There's already been some football and basketball, so lots more of that to come. And then yeah, cross over the pond is a new venture for me and a former pro and upcoming Amazon Prime analyst Drew Lasker as well, to get stuck into the more general world of the NBA. So you may hear more Clippers thoughts on there from me, but I'll save all the gems for you, James. Don't worry, mate.
Perfect. That's all I need, Josh. That's all I need. Um, Again, yeah, lovely having you on again, and I'm really excited for this season. Looking forward tonight. I won't be up, but I'll be avoiding all spoilers. I'll be watching it early in the morning before I start work. And yeah, looking forward to a Clippers dub. And yeah, thanks all for listening. It's been the View for the Clipper podcast. Back again for another season. Go Clips, go.